Welcome to Channel's Business Globe with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Coming up on today's show, the British capital bids farewell to Nigeria's former president, Muhammadu Buhari, who passed away in the UK after a prolonged illness. I speak exclusively with Senator Rochas Okorocha, a long-standing political associate, and author Dele Ogun, offering both political and legal insights into Buhari's complex legacy and its implications for Nigeria's democratic and economic trajectory. And from OPEC in Vienna, where we hear from Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum, Heineken Lopogbiri, and Wale Tinubu, Group CEO of Owando PLC, as they address Africa's role in a shifting global energy landscape. Our conversations explore Nigeria's evolving oil production strategies, the importance of energy transition policies, and how indigenous firms like Owando are navigating geopolitical pressures while aiming to secure long-term growth and investment in the sector. Then later, we bring you highlights from the BCA African Business Book of the Year Awards that recently held in London, celebrating the authors and ideas shaping Africa's business narrative. But first, the UK says goodbye to Muhammadu Buhari. Nigeria's former president was laid to rest in Daura on Tuesday after passing away in London at the age of 82 last weekend. His death has prompted global tributes and reflections on a complex legacy that spans military leadership, democratic transition, and national security reforms. I sat down with Senator Rochas Okorocha, a former governor of Imo State and a long-standing political associate of Buhari. Senator Okorocha, who served as a key figure within Buhari's APC-led government and once sought the presidency himself, offers a deeply personal and political perspective on Buhari's leadership, their shared vision for Nigeria, and how the late president's passing marks the end of a significant chapter in the country's modern history. I saw you, of course, on Sunday at the London clinic. You were one of the early callers. You obviously knew President Buhari personally and politically. In your view, what were some of his core principles or values that truly defined him as a leader?
First, let me just start by saying that Buhari was a great leader. May his soul rest in peace. But let me probably use this opportunity to express my personal feelings about his demise, especially on that very Sunday when we went to the hospital. I felt proud as a Nigerian that despite our political differences and our challenges, local challenges, when serious matters of death or similar issues come up, we brace up and become a united people. I think I must commend Nigerian President Tinubu for that, especially going to the hospital at that very broken moment where sadness filled the air, a sense of loss was there, families were aggrieved, not knowing what to do. The call came, and it was all over the social media that the president has ordered the vice president with a powerful delegation to leave immediately to London because we lost the leader. And that was what happened. When that news came, everybody had it. I was there with Alaj Daura and Mama Daura and some of the family members with Senator Sani and some group of family friends. When that news came, and everybody felt like, oh, it was a relief that a nation was involved. I think that was the healing point, that particular breaking news. Thereafter, the question was, has the vice president taken off? Is he coming? And when the vice president arrived, he took charge. He went to the family, he went to the hospital, he went to the embassy, he went so many places. Took
Unity.
Charge. And that alone, to me, defines who we are. That we are caring people, that we are such a lovely people, that despite our political and religious differences, we are still one when it comes to issues like this. So, but talking about the person of Muhammadu Buhari, I would consider it a privilege that I had known him for a very, very, very long time, much more than most Nigerians would say they do. Having contested 3 elections with him, one in 2003, one in 2015 and one in 2019. So I went through the whole line of politics with Buhari.
Was he a tough opponent?
He was a tough opponent, especially for the two elections. For one of the elections in 2003, it's another story to be told some other day because we're talking about the late.
Yes.
So he's such a great man, highly misunderstood, but remains who he is. You can change him. He's in a different class of being. Nothing bothers him. Most people you can read Buhari as a book from the perspective you want to take him. As a man who is mean, he qualified. As a good man, he's okay with it. As an honest guy, he qualified. As a man who, there's nothing anyone can talk about Buhari that does not pick a part of him. That's what makes him an enigma, a unique person to understand. So I think some are the same. He's a great man.
Talking about some of his personality traits, over the past couple of days, of course, there have been many tributes. One word that sticks out is humility. How does one remain humble and lead a nation as complex as Nigeria?
Well, one of the secrets of Buhari is that Buhari does not believe in primitive accumulation of words.
How?
As a person, the things of this world does not actually. He doesn't care about
vanity.
Vanity to him. I think he sees from that perspective.
Yeah.
So this idea of owning houses.
He was a rich man.
To the one you can define, but there's something being a rich man made by yourself and one that people are around you make you look rich. But Buhari, I don't think Buhari is somebody who really wants anything for himself. He's satisfied with whatever he has and he's contented with it. But somehow, he needs nothing, so he doesn't ask for anything. Throughout his elections, Buhari never asked anybody, please can you give me £1 for my campaign? In fact, sometimes we gossip him to say, even when you give him money, as if he's doing you a favor collecting your money. so he's such a personality that is quite difficult to pin down in one sentence. It's the complexity of his nature makes him who he is.
You were obviously Imo State Governor during the time of him being president. What were those meetings like with him? Give us some insight. Was he ferocious at times? Did he ever get angry?
Yeah, he doesn't get angry. But you can't even say whether he's angry or not angry. I tell you what Buhari does, which is so, I still can't understand even as I speak to you, is that Buhari does not take a decision. The eventual decision will come from you. One of the greatest experience I had with him was making Adam Oshimele the national chairman of the party. And after having meeting with Muhammadu and the late Bullet, may he rest in peace, and Abba Kyari, former chief of staff, and I was the chairman of the APC Governors Forum. There was confusion as to who the president wants to be his candidate. And we had gone to him severally as governors. He wouldn't make any commitment. At the point, he let us, whoever we want can come. So this day, I was, after having a meeting with these three gentlemen, I was asked to meet him. Because I was one of such people who could change his mood and talk to him. Anytime he looks like he doesn't like his situation, I put it to him direct. So I went to him and said, Mr. President, who do you want as chairman? Tell me. Well, I don't really have whoever. I said, Mr. President, from all your body language, I think you want Oshimole. And he said, Oshimole was such a fighter. He joined me again. Oshimole is a good fighter. As a labor, he fought. So I knew why he was mad. I said, so we'll settle for Oshimole. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no. So this day we came for a meeting. And I reported back to those that I had discussion with. I came back. One day I called the governor's meeting to go and meet go and meet Buhari on the issue of Oshimole. And I said to Abba Kyari, he should not attend the meeting. Let me go in there and work it out because he has to take a decision. The head of fight said, Your Excellency, whoever you say should be chairman, should be chairman. And I know, so I went there and said, Mr. President, I discussed with you. You said you want Oshimole. Do we go with Oshimole? Tell us here. And that's how Oshimole became national chairman of the party.
Well, continuing that conversation, I also spoke with author and historian Dele Ogun for his perspective on what Buhari's passing represents for Nigeria's democratic journey. President Buhari laid to rest on Tuesday. His legacy, of course, is shaped by being a former military ruler and civilian president. How rare is that combination if we talk about African leadership?
Well, not really that rare, because you had Rawlings before, who was a military ruler, then took his uniform off, became president. You had Museveni, and you still have him in Uganda, military ruler turned president. So it's not really that unusual. It's actually, in my assessment, is the template that the West now became comfortable with. So behind the civilian civic appearance is the steel of the soldier, and so Buhari is not an exception. He's only an exception because he's now, we're talking about his death, and in terms of Nigeria, his life actually defines the Nigeria story.
Interesting.
In this sense, that he joined the army in 1962. And it's ironic that we're doing this interview outside the British House of Commons, the Parliament. We started with the parliamentary system in 1960. We were kicked off with that. 1962 was the beginning of the political troubles, the first time that the military entered the space. What am I referring to? Western region, declaration of state of emergency, troops on the street, took over what was the Western Region Parliament at that time.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that Buhari, if you check the records, I'm pretty sure that Buhari was part of the soldiers, the young soldiers that were policing, took over Western Region at that time. Then we wind forward from the parliamentary system. What do we get next? Military rule, military intervention. Buhari was part of that story. He was governor of Borno in the Muritala administration. And then we roll forward again, roll past the war. When we come back out, what do we move to? A presidential system. And Buhari, once again, it manifests because he was military presidential ruler.
Wow.
So this is what I mean by saying that his life, when you look at it, it actually
runs parallel.
It runs parallel to the Nigeria story, from parliamentary system via military rule to presidential system.
It's very interesting. His presidency coincided with critical economic periods for Nigeria, oil shocks, global pandemics and domestic reforms. From your perspective as a lawyer, how would you summarize his impact on Nigeria's economic and legal structures?
Well, I would say that he exposed the nakedness of democracy in Nigeria. What do I mean by that? As I said, we started off with the parliamentary system.
Yes.
And it is ironic that here we are, inside that building, inside the Westminster model, here we are in Westminster, is a certain Nigerian lady, Kemi Badenoch, who is doing what? Her role is to hold the Prime Minister to account in the way he's running the country, the decisions he's making. Now, she represents what is missing from the current political structure that we have in Nigeria.
Credible opposition.
Credible opposition, and more than that, somebody who holds the main decision maker to account on a weekly basis on behalf of the people. Buhari was the one who actually, in my assessment, moved us from a presidential system, because even in a presidential system, Trump, you see, is still having to answer questions weekly, daily, etc., held to account. Buhari moved it to an imperial system.
Wow.
Because remember, when he took office, for the first 6 months, no ministers were appointed. He ran the country by himself. And then thereafter, he spoke when he chose to speak, such that it was almost doing us a favor when he condescended to speak. So we moved from, in my assessment, a presidential system that when he took office, by the time he left office, we've ended up with an imperial system.
Wow. Does that still exist?
It still does, because even Tinubu now, at what point is he held to account? So the foundations, he could not have run the country that way. But because of what Buhari did, such that nobody could question him, he was an untouchable. He was the emperor. And so therefore that has been inherited. And this is what we're still running with.
Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting just a stone's throw away from the Palace of Westminster in central London. I now take you to Vienna, where OPEC hosted its annual international seminar earlier this month, attracting over 1,000 global energy leaders, policymakers and investors. Major announcements from this year's gathering included renewed commitments to oil production stability amid volatile global markets and expanded dialogue on Africa's energy transition. With Nigeria playing a central role in these discussions, I spoke exclusively with Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum, Heineken Lokpokbori, to get his insights on how the country is balancing its domestic production targets with its international commitments. Honourable Minister, it's lovely to see you. We're pretty far away from Abuja. We're in Vienna and we're in a historic building. Lots of discussions at the ninth OPEC summit. I've heard energy security, sustainability, not to be afraid of the transition. Talk to me about Nigeria's participation at this dialogue.
Well, Nigeria is a critical partner in the global energy landscape. For an all-inclusive energy situation like Chip Global, Nigeria, the rest of Africa, have to play its role. The world is so interconnected that no geographical region, can provide the kind of energy security that we need for the world. Energy is needed. And so that's why I'm happy that you are part of this seminar, the ninth of its kind, OPEC here. And Africa, and Nigeria particularly, will be here to tell the Africans and say, look, what we need now is investment. We've been able to carry out the requisite reforms in terms of our legal framework. We have also made reforms in terms of our fiscal regime. We've carried out so many incentives with a view to attract investments that started coming in. We're not at the scale that we you heard when the moderator said that out of what was invested last year, Nigeria Africa got only about 3%, which is a far cry from what was expected for the kind of energy Africa and part of global energy evolution. But what we're saying is that Africa is doing so many reforms. Africa, so for business, Africa doesn't want handouts. And we have to look at this whole story of energy transition. The reason why investment is slowing down in Africa is that basically capital comes from the West. Companies in the West are investing in similar fossil fuel exploration in the West. When it comes to Africa, they say, stop fossil fuel investment. And that's what we're saying, the global north has to view Africa as unless Africa is not considered as part of the global community, then they should tell us so that we will know our status in the world and find alternatives. But I believe that global north should realize that in terms of energy transition, in terms of energy accessibility, in terms of energy affordability and sustainability, Africa has to be established. And that, yes, we have a collective solution to Africa's energy problem. We can't industrialize. We can't create the kind of jobs that Africa needs. And the entire world will also face the consequences. The migration that we are seeing, people crossing the sea to Europe. Will be on it. But let's solve Africa's energy demands, get industrialized, create economies that provide sustainable jobs, create economy that will be able to provide affordable, accessible energy for the African community. On the issue of energy transition, the statistics are there. The entire Africa actually a victim. The whole of Africa contributes only about 3% of global emissions. The entire OPEC countries contribute only about 4%. The entire OPEC countries contribute only about 4%. But the UK alone contributes about 4%. Between China and the US, it contributes about 55%. And so that's why I've always contended that this is basically geopolitics. There is no deliberate effort And the part about the United Nations or those, environmental envoys, environmental campaigners, to stop China and the US from reducing their emissions. People are misrepresenting the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement of 2015 typically reduce CO2 emissions. As we speak now, China and USA, I'm sure in Nigeria you can do your own investigation. They are not doing what is expected to be done to reduce emissions. Rather, they are saying the global south stop fossil fuel production. With the fossil fuel production in Africa, we do only 2%. With fossil fuel production, among the OPEC countries, we do only 4%. Less than one country, Europe. So you can imagine the geopolitics that we're talking about. So we believe that it's very important when we come to forum like this to canvass that case.
Also in Vienna, I caught up with Wale Tinubu, Group CEO of Owando PLC. We discussed how Nigerian firms are positioning themselves for the future amid the global energy transition.
We need an energy transition. First and foremost, it needs to be just. So I think I expressed the point that Africa is 20% of global population, 3% of global size of the global economy. Yeah, it's a big thing. It's an economy. It does need to get support in the process of providing access to energy products. 45% of Africans do not have access to energy products. We want to take note of that in the process of creating regulations, principles, or policies which are realistic in terms of local development. So first things first, that we do have a stable, long-term, and attractive oil and gas market in Nigeria. We've got our PIA passed from a regulatory point of view. We've got a set of rules and regulations that create an element of fiscal certainty for investors. Two, we have a strong national oil company to anchor this development. We structured excellent CEO, very good management, solid board behind that. And three, you've got indigenous companies who are intimate with the environment, intimate with the businesses, know how to handle local production, and now we're close to 1/3 of production now being done by the indigenous companies. And we are ready to go, and we need to be, the world needs to know how much of an interesting investment destination we really are today.
And now to my final story, a celebration of ideas and storytelling. The BCA African Business Book of the Year Awards took place in London recently, drawing a distinguished audience of authors, business leaders, policymakers and investors. The event honoured outstanding works that are helping to shape perceptions of African business leadership and economic potential on the global stage, from insights on sustainable finance to narratives on entrepreneurial innovation. The awards highlighted the growing influence of African thought leadership in shaping international discourse.
The BCA Business Award is in its third season, and the objective is to promote serious literature on African business and African business leaders. Today's event has been very successful. We had as a guest speaker and guest of honor the chairman of the EcoBank Group, which, as you know, is present in more African countries than any other banking group in the world. Last year, we had the former Minister for Africa in the British government. So we are bringing people here who can share experiences and who we can learn from in terms of telling the African business narrative.
I think there's not enough business books on Africa out there, and we need more of those. The African story has to be told. Growing up, people like me didn't have as much access to business books on Africa. Most of what we learned on business was learned looking at other parts of the world. And as some emerging markets started growing, we started looking at those emerging markets to inspire ourselves as to what's possible in Africa.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for you today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.